Hey, I'm Phil, and I'm the Smart Farms Coordinator for Steens Coast Farmers based down here in Albany in the Great Southern region of WA. And today I'm excited to talk to you about our subsurface drainage project and the key findings that we've found in the first year of operation. The project is a 3-year project in collaboration with the GRDC, Grains Research and Development Corporation, and it's looking at the use of slotted pipe as a method of managing subsurface water. The project itself has been designed to help growers make informed decisions around the installation of subsurface drainage. And it looks at minimising the impacts of waterlogging, either in productivity or in profitability effects. The project comprises of 2 demonstration sites located here in the Albany Port Zone, where each demonstration site will have a full return on investment analysis completed, as well as individual case studies. Over the life of this 3-year project, we'll be having a range of information materials will be created, looking at things like design, maintenance and installation of pipework. A range of fieldwalks will also be conducted, so keep an eye out on emails for upcoming events. I should also mention that this project is solely looking at the management of fresh water only and not saline water. If you are interested in draining saline water, please do check out your state and territory regulations, as a formal notice of intent to drain may be required. Currently, there's really only 2 ways of managing water, and that's the use of surface drainage or subsurface drainage. So when we look at surface drainage, we're talking about things such as excavated drains, raised beds, catchments, and also shallow drains that vehicles can drive over quite easily. These drains are very cost effective. They're relatively low maintenance, possibly with a bit of greater work every now and then to keep them clean. But the biggest downside to this sort of water management solution is tractability. And quite often it makes it hard to keep nice long continuous passes in paddocks. Subsurface drainage involves burying pipe at depth as one method of it. And also includes mole drains, which is basically creating like a channel underneath the ground surface. These are all relatively low maintenance, particularly with your slotted pipe. Mole drains are a little bit more work, have improved trafficability because you don't have to stop as you go over drains, but they do come at a higher cost. One of the trial sites which we have is located west of Cranbrook, and it's held at the Preston family farm, 100 k's north of Albany and 20 k's west of Cranbrook. The long-term average rainfall sits around the 480 millimetres mark, and the soil type is typically around that 45 to 60 centimetres of sand over clay. 2020 was a relatively dry start, and we had season-breaking rains in early August, and much of the SCF membership zone had in excess of 120 mils in that first week. What we saw at the Prestons in particular in September was the effects of waterlogging, and that's that lighter coloured plant biomass is significantly being reduced where water is pooling. You can also have a look at the effects on the root system of waterlogged plants versus those which aren't waterlogged. And it is quite significant, and ultimately this results in a yield difference. In January 2021, we conducted some elevation mapping with RTK GPS, which was giving us around that 2.5 centimetres accuracy, and we were able to utilise this data to create water flow maps and contour maps to help design some of these areas in particular where we needed extra water management conducted. The trial site itself is really looking at 3 distinct areas in that southern edge of that paddock. It comprises of an undrained GRDC section, which is basically left on its own, a drained GRDC, and then we've also got a second smaller polygon, which is also drained as well. And effectively the water comes through these blue pipes, which we're calling secondary, and then flow into the red pipes and into a small creek with fresh water. In February, SCF conducted a field walk, and as the installation processes were begun. And the installation is quite simple. Once the design has been created, we use this trenching machine, which has a chainsaw type thing, which digs a trench anywhere between that 0.5 metre to 1.5 metre depth at the Preston site, drops the pipe in, and then we also have a limestone rubble which is covered over the top. This helps add extra permeability for the pipe, as well as sort of creating that secondary water flow if that pipe pathway was blocked. After the process is conducted, that topsoil is then covered back over that trench, and yeah, it's effectively nice smooth driving with very minimal maintenance. So 2021 certainly brought its challenges across, and this is looking at the rainfall. And that red region is effectively the last 20 years of rainfall for the region itself, not necessarily looking at Preston site, but what is called silo rainfall data. And it shows the variation between the minimum and height and maximum rainfall values. The blue line itself is the 2020 rainfall, and it totaled 462 mils for the year. The green line was actually what we achieved at the Preston site, and it was the wettest year on record. Total of 748 millimetres of rainfall fell, well and truly above the 480 mil average. In early February, the drainage was installed, where in mid-May, 100 kilos of Flinders barley was sown, and then we harvested around mid-December. So as you can see, the season was quite wet. In June, we struggled to walk across paddocks. Sadly, in July, it was much the same. And in August, well, depending on how good your screen is, up in this top right corner of this image is actually all underwater. You can see the effects of where the installed pipe is. It's a lot more green, it's a lot more healthy, and the crop did really quite well. And what you could notice when you're actually walking across the field was just how different it was. You could easily walk across and stand on the soil and it sort of felt dryish, where you barely could be able to walk across the undrained section, quite often getting footlogged. Throughout the season, we were able to see these pipes show as higher biomass. And you can really see the distinct patterns of the drainage installation itself. You can also see notice the difference in biomass here, where it's significantly reduced due to waterlogging. And that sadly occurred throughout the whole season. Overall, when we start looking at things like plant establishment, plant till accounts were up to 30% better in the drained regions when compared against the undrained. They also had significantly improved root structure, and overall healthier plants were seen in the drained. The image on the right really shows the biomass of the drained area, and then beyond where the mouse is undrained. And you can see quite a difference in yellowing the further north, the further back throughout the picture you see. In 2021, you could actually still see at harvest where the main primary pipe was and the secondary pipes growing off. Overall, the yield results were quite positive for the drained regions. So when we look at the control, we're sitting around a 2.21 tonne average for the Flinders barley, and looking at the drain section, which was just located to the west of it, 3.2 tonnes. So it's just about a 1 tonne yield improvement. And then further west again in that smaller trial plot, nearly 3.3 tonne. Interestingly, we've also got two controls, and these are basically different parts of the paddock which aren't low lying, and effectively shows what the yield potential is. And this has been broken down into a medium performing and a high performing yield. So the high performing yield, we saw 6 tonne average, whilst the medium performing yield was 3.7. So depending on what sort of performing zone we believe these drained sections are, we could be potentially looking at at least another half a tonne of yield when waterlogging is fully managed. In 2022, we were lucky enough to get a grant variation to implement a second drainage site located at Perillup at the Perillup Pastoral Co, which is the Ellison family farms. And this site has in excess of 12 k's of pipe installed now. With the layout, quite a complex one, some with primary pipes, just the greens only, and then also some adding in secondary spur lines, which are the blue icons. This site is slightly different to the Preston family site. It has quite a different soil type structure, and depending on where you are in this landscape, could be anywhere between 60 to 80 centimetres of sand with a bit of gravel or rock before you hit clay. And finally, one of the biggest questions we often get asked is it really worth investing in it? When we conducted initial surveys of our membership zone, 46% of our members believed it would take 3 to 4 years to economically pay itself off installation-wise. And a further 38% believed it would take at least 5 years for return on an investment to be achieved. If we were to just purely look at these new green lines that we've put in on the map here as extra areas where we could potentially drain, we could look at adding another 3.5 kilometres. And this is only an example. What we found is that the estimated cost of install lays somewhere around the $14,000 mark per kilometre installed. And this is everything inclusive. We're talking the limestone rubble, the actual install costs, and also the pipe itself. So if we were to talk 3.5 Ks times $14,000 as an indicative number, this is only indicative, we're looking at roughly $49,000 to further drain this paddock. When we look at the yield maps and we talk about, say, for example, this top left corner, we actually only averaged 1.5 tonne here in yield this year. If we were to look at the production zone here, which was much higher, that yield could have been 5.8 tonne itself. So there's a 4.3 tonne lost yield opportunity here. And if we were to utilise, say, an average barley price of around $250 a tonne, what that effectively means is that we've lost 7.5 grand in that area this year. If we were to look at the bottom third, which comprises of this area and also this area here, we would need roughly 2 Ks of pipe, and that area averaged 2.2 tonne, where everything else was around that 3.3 average, or we've lost 1.1 tonne and a further 5.5 grand. So this year alone, we've probably lost around that 13 grand worth of opportunity for yield. So if we worked that out, $49,000 for the pipe, divide that by the $13,000 that we've lost, that's roughly 3.8 years worth of barley to pay off that pipe, assuming that the same net yield gains, pricing and relative differences in yield stay the same. The cost of install is challenging, and it will vary according to where you have your pipe laid, what the mobilisation costs are, how easy it is to install, and how many kilometres you can do. But $14,000 is sort of around that industry sort of average for what we've seen for quite large jobs. So if you were to just look at 0.5 K, then obviously it would be quite substantially more. We would also like to acknowledge the GRDC and the support for this project this year, as well as the 2 trial hosts, the Preston family at Preston Family Farms, as well as the Allison family at Perillup Pastoral Co. If you'd like any more information about the GRDC SCF subsurface drainage project, please visit our website at scfarmers.org.au, scroll up to the top and look at projects subsurface drainage. Otherwise, feel free to give me a call at any time if you'd like to learn more about the project or possibly even see our trial site. Thank you.